All right, this is second grade, Module 5, Lesson 18, and we are going to be applying and explaining sneaky alternate methods for subtracting rather than just using the standard algorithm. Remember, the whole point of this is that not only do we want students to know the standard algorithm, but we also want them to know the meaning behind it, and we want students to develop number sense so that perhaps they could get the answer in ways other than the standard algorithm, because maybe the standard algorithm for a particular problem isn't the easiest way. So let's do some practice here. So they're specifically asking us to use the arrow way to solve this problem. And the idea is, now they're specifically saying the count on method. So what they're saying is, think of this problem, 700 minus 462, equaling what? Think of it as a fact family, where it's really 462 plus what equals 700. All right, and so we're going to use the arrow method. We're going to start with 462, and we're going to figure out what do we have to add to 462 to get to 700. And so there's a ton of different ways to do this. Oh, one way might be I'm going to add 8. And when I add 8, that gets me to 470. And then I'm going to add 30. And when I add 30, that gets me up to 500. And then I'm going to add 200, and that gets me to 700. So we now have our answer. We added 200 plus 30 plus 8. So we added 238. So our subtraction is 238. So 700 minus 462 is 238. So this is called the arrow method. You know, what's really popular right now is the empty number line, very similar to the arrow method, and I thought I would show it to you, even though EngageNY does not, or Eureka Math doesn't explicitly talk about it. So we have this empty number line, and we're going to fill it in with, of course, 462 and 700. And then we do our hops, and we want to know our total distance from 462 up to 700. And we're going to do it in a series of hops. And the hops can go in any order. There's, just like this is not the only order. It's the only answer, but it's not the only order that we could have done it in. And so the empty number line, similarly, you do a little hop of 8, and that puts you at 470. And then you could do a hop of 30, and that puts you at 500. And then you could do a hop of 200, and that gets you to 700. So similar to the arrow method, we've got these hops on a number line, and of course the answer is 238. Now again, we didn't have to go in this order. We didn't have to start by adding 8. We could have started by adding 200, or we could have started by adding 100, then another 100. It's really up to the students on how they hop or how they use the arrows to get to their destination. So this method is explicitly telling us to solve using the vertical method. So let's do that. So that's 803 minus 667. And we're told that we're going to need to do some unbundling, and because it says rename it in one step. So we can see that right here we have 3 ones, and we're supposed to take away 7 ones, which means we can't do that. So we're going to need to unbundle. So we're going to go all the way over to the hundreds column, unbundle one of those hundreds, so we're going to be left with 7 hundreds, and that gives us 10 tens. Then we can unbundle one of those tens, leaving us with 9 tens, and that gives us 10 ones, so now we have 13 ones all together. So there's our renaming that we were asked to do. And now we have 13 minus 7 gives us 6. 9 tens, take away 6 tens, gives us 3 tens. And 7 hundreds, take away 6 hundreds, gives us 100. So our answer is 136. Now it does ask us to do the place value chart and the discs, this thing, the hundreds, tens, and ones. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to skip that because you could just watch any of the previous videos that have all that place value stuff. I just wanted to show that vertical method using the vocabulary of number sense. Now this one says we get to choose our strategy and then solve. So what I'm going to do is I notice that this guy is really close to a landmark number. So that tells me that we can add 10 to both of these numbers. And we're going to get a different problem. Our problem is going to be 710 minus 400. But this problem is going to give us the exact same answer as 700 minus 390. So now we can subtract 710, take away 400. So 700s take away 400s gives us 300s, and then 10 take away nothing is 10. So our answer is 310, so that means this answer is 310. Now for our explanation, instead of giving you words, I'm going to give you a picture. I'm going to say, well, if we were to make a tape diagram, here's our tape diagram for 700, and here's our tape diagram for 390. So here's 700, and here's 390, and this gap right here is our answer to 700 minus 390. All right. Now, if we add 10 to this tape, add 10, and add 10 to this tape, the gap itself doesn't change. The gap is still there. So instead of thinking of this as 700 take away 390, that's the black part here, we could include the blue part and make it this whole thing, which is 710 take away 400. 710 take away 400, and that'll give us the same answer because the gap itself never changed. The gap is still there whether you're looking at the 700 take away 390 or if you're looking at the 710 take away 400. The gap is the same, so the answer is the same in both cases. So that's my explanation. And the last problem for this video, it says solve using that same strategy from problem 4. Now my video didn't show problem 4. I just skipped straight to problem 5, so I'm just going to show you how to solve problem 5, and it's the same technique as in problem 4. So the idea is we're going to take that 500, we're going to think of the 500, and let's call that 500, and we're going to think of this as the 278, and here's my gap, so there's my answer. But I don't want to do 500 take away 278 because that's a complicated problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chop off one block from each tape. So that's going to change the problem. Instead of this being 500, it becomes 499, and instead of this being 278, it becomes 277. So the problem becomes 499 take away 277. And it's the same answer. Both of these problems are going to have the same answer because the gap itself never changed. Only the lengths of the tapes changed, but the gap itself didn't. So these two problems are going to have the same answer. So is it easier to do this problem in black or this problem in red? And I would say it's probably easier to do this problem in red. So we have 9 take away 7, that gives us 2. And then we have another 9 take away 7, that gives us 2. And then we have 4 take away 2, and that equals 2. So the answer is 222. And so that means the original problem, the answer is also 222. And that's this simplifying strategy. It's where you don't want to have to do all this regrouping because of the 500. So you take your tape diagram and you chop off one from each of them, and now you have a slightly simpler problem. Another way to think of this is not at all how Eureka Math or Engage does it, but you could think of it like this: 500 minus 278, and you can use decomposition to change 500 to 1 plus 499. And those are added, right? And so now you can use subtraction, and we could do 499 take away 278. And when I do that, I get 221. So this piece right here is equal to 221, and then I add in that original 1 that I kind of temporarily took out, and that gives me 222, which is the answer that we kind of knew all along. So that's another way to think of it. I call that the decomposition method because we're decomposing 500. And so that wraps up problem 5. And that also wraps up grade 2, module 5, lesson 18, using some alternate methods to subtract.